The National Assembly is back for business this new year, and at the first sitting of the Senate, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill formed part of discussion points at plenary. National Assembly correspondent Tijesu Adeoye reports.
The first working day for lawmakers in the new year. They return to work to continue with legislative activities. Indeed, they are glad to be back as they chat and exchange pleasantries just before plenary commences. The day begins with an hour-long executive session, and then open letters from Mr. President are read on the floor.
I believe that the recess gave us the opportunity.
President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, welcomes his colleagues back to work and briefs them on the task ahead. He says the National Assembly will work in earnest to conclude work on the amendment of the 1999 Constitution as well as the Electoral Act Amendment Bill returned to the National Assembly by Mr. President.
Oversight on the implementation of the budget is a critical function of the National Assembly. We must therefore strategize on effective oversight of the implementation of the 2022 budget. The Senate therefore need to seriously supervise the implementation of the PIA 2021. We must ensure that our country starts to benefit from the passage of the PIA.
The Senate President also urged his colleagues to be more committed to their oversight functions, especially as it concerns the implementation of the 2022 budget as well as the Petroleum Industry Act.
Distinguished colleagues, the Senate postponed discussions on the consideration of response of Mr. President on the Electoral Act 2010 Amendment Bill to enable us to consult with our counterparts in the House of Representatives and also consult our constituents. The review of the 1999 Constitution is a major plank of our legislative agenda. Our Committee on Review of the 1999 Constitution has done so much work so far. Working with their counterparts in the House of Representatives, the report of the committee will be presented to the Senate for consideration soon.
Well, joining me in the studio to discuss issues around the Electoral Amendment Bill and the 2023 general elections is Managing Editor Avanan Daily and National Publicity Secretary Youth Party Ayodele Adio. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right. INEC chair has said that no electoral law, no election timetable is warning. Although the National Assembly, the Senate has said that they will be looking into that matter today, and the House of Representatives are also looking to address the issues surrounding this matter today as well. But then again, before they went on recess, we saw that some actions were being taken by these people. Two things. We saw that some persons were already collating signatures at the time. Then afterwards, they came out to tell us that they will consult with their constituents when they go on recess and now return. What do you think, or what do you see going to play out now that they are back? Is it the aspect of still collating signatures, or that they have consulted with their constituents and perhaps decisions have been taken, and so will want to align themselves with the decisions of their constituents? Where do you see both houses swinging?
I'm not sure that your representative has consulted with you. Neither has mine consulted with me. So I think it's important not to leave this in the hands of the members of the National Assembly. I think the Nigerian people must demand that the electoral bill be passed. Because credible elections are the linchpins of democratic governments and institutions across the world.
Absolutely.
They are the bedrock of democratic nations, and it's not something that we should tinker around with. And the National Assembly owes the Nigerian people that document being passed. Recall that even before the 2019 elections, when the bill should have been passed at the time, the president said it was too close to the elections, and so it would tamper or muddle with the process, and he didn't want that to happen. But he was so committed to the bill that once the elections were done, he was going to have it signed. And here we are, he's running, he's getting to the end of his second term, and we're still playing Russian roulette with a bill as important as the electoral bill. And that should stop. And that's why I say we cannot leave this for the members of the National Assembly to just decide whether or not that bill is going to be passed. The Nigerian people must pressure them to say that our country deserves credible elections, our country deserves transparent elections, and our country deserves to have an electoral process that ensures that it's, that are not decided by the courts or the judicial institutions.
Absolutely.
We want an electoral system where the winners are announced a day after elections or after votes have been cast. And when you go home, you are sure that an election had been won or lost. And that can only happen when that bill is eventually passed and turned into an act.
And we are running out of time as it is, because INEC is insisting if nothing is done as quickly as possible. It had said that they need about 13 to 18 months for laws like this so that they can, make the necessary adjustments and have a smooth process. And so we are waiting to see what happens perhaps before the end of this week as time and the days are counting. But then again, let's look at the undercurrents, the issues that are playing out with regards to this Electoral Amendment Act, so to speak. There are those who say that this seems to be a power play between the governors and members of the House of the National Assembly, who think that these governors have wielded so much power and perhaps want to tame them. And people are asking, why do you want to bring us into all of this mix? Isn't that supposed to be issues that you deal with someplace else and not bring us in? If you want to deal with these people, Nigeria shouldn't be part of it. But then what do you see with regards to this aspect of power play? Governors being seen as being too powerful?
Yeah, I think you make a very, very important point. And that brings us to what the contentious issue in the electoral bill and why it has not been passed, which is the issue of the direct primaries.
Right.
The members of the National Assembly have not pretended to say that the reason that they have pushed for direct primary elections is so that they can somehow neutralize the powers of the governors who have hitherto determined the amounts of delegates in a state and influenced delegates in indirect primary elections, and they want to break that monopoly or power that governors have. And they have thrown that to the Nigerian people as being giving back the power to the Nigerian people.
Right, because they said that they want more participation.
Yes, an entire joke. It's a complete fiasco for me.
Really?
Because first and foremost, you cannot be saying on the one hand that you are throwing power to the Nigerian people when you have clearly articulated your selfish interest, which is the fact that you want to neutralize the position of governors. But first, let us start. There are so many members in the National Assembly who have spent more term in office than the governors. You can't spend more than 2 terms as a governor. Absolutely. There are so many members in the National Assembly who have spent 3, 4, 5 terms in office, meaning they outlast the governors in their state. And I can tell you for free, the Speaker, for instance, who is a strong advocate for direct primaries, I am not sure that there is a governor that can manipulate the delegate system that will not return Gbajabi Amila in Surulere, because he's on ground. He's committed to his constituents, and he has his own delegates who are committed to him in his constituency, right? So the idea that you want the Nigerian people to do your job for you makes it very funny to me. There is no way in the next 13 months that Nigeria has the capacity to conduct a nationwide direct primary elections monitored by who? If you look at social media, there's a video trending around of a so-called direct primary election in a particular state where they were trying to elect delegates, and the kind of counting that happened in that video, the entire shenanigans, the fiasco of what a direct primary election is in Nigeria. Who is going to monitor direct primary elections across the entire nation for a presidential election? Who will determine the credibility of the process? Who determines the validity of the voters register? Who determines who is eligible to vote and who isn't eligible to vote? It is a complete joke.
So
cannot do that.
Both options are subject to manipulation.
The point is, as you speak today, every political party has the option of a direct and indirect primary election, isn't
Right.
it? I mean, I sit on the National Executive Council of the Youth Party, and I can tell you that for free, that every political party has the option of a direct and an indirect primary,
Right.
And secondly, no political party, for instance, the APC lost the seat in Zamfara State. They couldn't contest that election because parties in that election went to court to say that there was no direct primary elections. Rotimi Amechi became governor because he went to court to contest the primary election that sprung up Celestine Omeha as governor. And the Supreme Court removed him and installed Rotimi Amechi as governor. What does that mean? It tells you that if parties within a political party are not satisfied with the internal process that springs up a candidate, they have a right to challenge the legitimacy of that election.
Absolutely.
So what political parties are doing, or what the speaker is trying to do, or the National Assembly members are trying to do, is for the Nigerian people to do their job for them. They know the people who impose candidates in their political parties. They know the few people in their political party that ensures that a certain popular candidate does not emerge, and they force candidate on people. Why don't they stand up to those people in their political parties to determine or to decide for a credible process where candidates emerge? Mind you, these people you call delegates are members of political parties who run elections across the world, they do state congresses. The APC does the state congress. So it is members of political parties who aspired for political offices. It means they were popular in probably their local government or something. So suddenly we're saying that those people cannot be representative of certain people within their political party. The problem is not whether it is direct or indirect primaries. The problem is that politicians lack fidelity to the governing constitutions of their political party. They manipulate this process. They force candidates on people. Their internal disciplinary mechanisms are shabby. And you have a situation where there are consistently internal chaos within the political party because people cannot follow their own laid down constitution. So you can't have the Nigerian people do your job for you. We don't sit
when
down.
you haven't put your house in order.
Exactly. Every election, the National Executive Council, the Working Committee, sets out a guideline issued by the organizing secretary of the political party. He said, this is how we're going to conduct primary elections. It is circulated. People have a window of opportunity to decide whether or not they agree with that terms. Because political parties are not monarchies. It's a democratically set up institution. People have a right to say, we don't like these processes. There's a period of appeal. The adjustments are made. And then guidelines are issued for the primary elections to hold. At least that's how it's done in my own political party. And I assume that is supposed to be the standard because these parties have constitutions.
Right.
The problem is they lack the fidelity to the constitution that is supposed to govern them. And then you want the Nigerian people to do your job for you by claiming that it is the Nigerian. So now, you are now slowing down an electoral act that is supposed to move our electoral process forward. Because you want the Nigerian people to do your job for you, to roll out a direct primary election that you and I know is impossible to monitor.
We only hope that now that they have agreed that they will perhaps look into the issues raised by the president today, that they wouldn't slow the process as it is. And from what you have said, it is for political parties to look inwards and address the issues, especially with regards to their party constitution, and ensure that it is effective. The whole process is effective. Now, let's look at all of the amendments we have been trying to make to our electoral acts since 1999 till date. How has that moved us forward? How has that helped our democracy, our processes up till now? How has that, boost the image of our electoral process, transparency, the integrity, and all of it?
I would say that we've had a lot more progress from 2010, 2011, up until 2015, when Jega was the INEC chairman, where he led certain internal reforms within his jurisdiction as the chairman of INEC. to clean up the voters register, to make it a lot more credible, to improve the validation process, or the accreditation process of voters, and minimized a lot of rigging that used to happen in elections before he became INEC chairman. And since then, we have seen some sort of, I would say, marginal increase in the credibility of the process, such that today you can sit in your house and monitor election results from polling units across the state where an election is being conducted. You no longer wait until it gets to the coalition center and it's announced before you can follow a particular result. And so the idea that people could change results from polling units before it gets to the coalition center has somewhat been eliminated by some of the innovations that have been implemented by INEC. So to that extent, I would say that we've made very good progress from the days where elections could simply be announced in Abuja, whether or not that election was free or fair, to the extent that even the sitting president admitted, which was the late President Yar'Adua, that the process that brought him into office was flawed. And that was why he committed to reforming the electoral system. So I would say that we have made good progress. And this is another opportunity, again, to move the needle forward. And it must not be taken for granted that some of the provisions that have been made in that electoral act will certainly make our electoral process a lot more credible. Of course, there are issues, there are contending issues in that same bill that, of course, we would like expunged, and particularly the issue of the processes in which a political party is being deregistered. Because one thing that is important, in that bill they propose that except you win a governorship election, a House of Assembly election, you will be deregistered as a political party. Now, I think the framers of those bills missed two very important things. That number one, political parties are not set up to simply win elections. Elections are important. To win elections are important because the party has the opportunity to govern and to implement its own ideas and programs. But that is not the sole responsibilities of political parties. Political parties are supposed to form oppositions that educate the voters, that profile alternative ideas into the public, and that holds the government in power to account. Now, these are important roles in a democracy that should not be trivialized. And secondly, and most importantly, we must continue to expand the political space and not shrink it. Nigeria is not a two-party state. And the idea that we can use electoral laws to shrink the political space to fit a certain political elite should not be acceptable. And for instance, the speaker who said he wanted to give back power to the people, the only way to give back democratic power to the people is to expand the political space such that when people say, I don't like what is happening in the APC, I don't like what is happening in the PDP, for instance, I have an alternative in the Youth Party, in the Labour Party, in whatever political party that you so desire. And so if you say that you don't like the internal processes of a certain political party and how their political candidates emerge, you have the right to go and support a candidate in another political party. And that is why we must continue to advocate that the political space be expanded so that the Nigerian people are open to options. That cannot be overemphasized. And so when we limit political participation to winning elections, we create a system where politicians govern in 4-year cycles and then they implement what you call perfunctory or superficial projects that make it enough for them to win the next elections, and they don't pursue deep-seated reforms, because we have said to the Nigerian people that all that matters is to win elections. And these people would do anything to win elections, to stay in power, and that is why our country has remained poor, unemployment has increased, and very few reforms has happened. So we cannot continue to encourage a system where people can wake up and eliminate political parties that...
But how vibrant have been, because we still have other political parties aside the APC and the PDP.
Yes.
How vibrant have those other political parties been? Because that's a question some Nigerians are asking. How are we hearing their voices? Are we hearing them say things to challenge the government, hold the government to account?
So it's a two-way sword.
Right.
I also hold you accountable for one part of the sword. So I will not speak for the other several political parties, but I can tell you for free that every quarter, the Youth Party produces and publishes a policy document on a specific sector of the economy and makes it available to the public. For instance, there are budget issues now. We have published a paper called the Bold Revenue Plan that clearly articulates how the Nigerian government can improve its revenue to GDP ratio from 8% to 15%, and to increase and to reduce our debt services. So political parties are participating. We, for instance, have continued to put out ideas into the public. The question to ask is, are people in the media, like you and like your colleagues, willing to listen to alternative ideas and to give platforms to other political parties who are not just making noise?
Are we not listening to you now?
Yes, you are.
Right.
That's why I said I'm going
so
to
you can't hold me to account anymore.
You know, to give people, to allow for alternative ideas,
right,
and to enrich the political space, and not simply always take cameras to where the PDP are fighting or the APC are fighting. The Nigerian people need new ideas.
Well, they don't only fight, they do other things as well. But we'll have to leave the conversation here. Ayodele Adio, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.